Well, hi there. As you may well know, because you opened this section, this playlist is going to shortly, in 4 or 5 videos tops, going to describe the structure of the IGCSE history examination for you to be able to tackle it and pass it with flying colors. So let's see. The first thing for you to know is you don't need to panic. You don't need to scream. This examination seems very hard, but it's not so difficult. As long as you practice, as long as you study the topics, you will be just fine. The paper is divided into 3 written parts. The first part, paper 1, is going to ask you to answer 9 different questions, which are actually divided into 3, 3, and 3. We will go through that paper in the following video. But this paper is very important because it's 40% of your mark. Paper 2 is source analysis. The really good thing about this paper is that we know in advance which are the topics that you're going to be asked to study. Cambridge publishes them every year, so that's good. You can practice with all the sources you may find on the internet, plus all the sources I'm going to add in the videos. And it's 33% of your mark. Paper 4 is only 27%, but don't be, let's say, tricked by this. It's only 1 essay writing. By the way, you will be writing similar things in paper 1 and paper 2. So this essay needs to be the best one you have ever written, probably. And it's going to be about one of the depth studies. So we'll go over it in the following videos. The IGCSE exam is divided into core topics and depth studies. You will probably see that in your book. Most of the books are divided into core topics and depth studies too. The core topics so far, because they are sometimes changing, I'm not going to say always because we have stuck to the same program for a few years already, but it will probably change, are: were the peace treaties of 1919-1923 after the First World Warfare? To what extent was the League of Nations a success? Why had international peace collapsed by 1939? As you can see, they're all questions because they're all essay topics. Who was to blame for the Cold War? And they are all tricky, of course. How effectively did the United States contain the spread of communism? That's the one that is going to be tested in November this year. This year is 2020, by the way. How secure was the USSR's control over Eastern Europe from 1948 until the fall of the Berlin Wall? Why did events in the Gulf matter? That's from 1970 until 2000. All of these topics are compulsory. You need to study them all. You need to know them all because you won't know which one will be tested in paper 1. Paper 1 will have 6 questions about some of these core topics, and you will have to know them. Paper 2 will be based on one of these topics, but you will know in advance again which one of the topics you're going to be tested with. And then you'll have the depth studies, which are, of course, everyone's favorite parts because they're the most interesting ones. You have the First World War, Germany, from 1918 till 1945. That's probably one topic that you're going to study or that you studied in school because it's elemental to know the rest of things that happened in Europe in the 20th century. Russia, which is also essential because you'll need to know it to understand the Cold War. The United States, very interesting, very easy, by the way. China, South Africa, and the conflicts between Israel and Palestinians. You don't need to study all the depth studies. It's usually recommended that you study at least 2 of them. If you want more, go ahead and do it. You will need only 1 in reality. But don't trust that. Study 2. Because if you study only 1 and the questions in the exam end up to be pretty hard, you will have a difficulty there. So it's better to at least study 1 with a lot of detail and know another one just in case. You don't know whenever, maybe you'll need it. So why is this program of the history of IGCSE important? Because you're probably let's say it's fairly compulsory at your school. That's why you're studying it. It's not maybe because you are interested in it. But what you need to know is that it's actually very interesting because everything that is happening now in the 21st century is due to the 20th century. And of course, everything before that. But you probably heard of Hitler. You probably heard of Mussolini. You probably heard of Mao. Yes. And so on and so forth with all the people that you're going to see here. We have Saddam Hussein also here. And Joseph Stalin. You're going to, well, there are some videos. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint for you to check it out. But let's say, for example, that we watch a video from the 20th century. Let's say that we watch this very famous speech. Oh.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
So let's say that you're faced with that. Let's say that a friend of yours is a history whiz, and they are talking about that video, and you don't have a clue what he's talking about, but it's actually a very important moment in history. I have a dream is, let's say, the most famous speech in history. Can you guess who gave the speech? In which context? Why do you think it's important? Do you think that having freedom for all and equality is important? Well, it started here. It's based on this event. You're also going to revise, well, as I said before, Mussolini, Nasser, Tito, Kim Il-sung, and understand what's happening nowadays in Korea. You will probably understand better movies like this one, The Great Dictator from Chaplin from 1940, that of course depicted Hitler. Why is he condemning so hard these events in history? What happened in Germany and in the Second World War? Which event is he referring to? It's very interesting to actually know these things. Most of the books that we read, most of the movies that we see and watch, let's say, and most of the, let's say, cultural productions that surround us are not just based on fantasy. We can create things out of nothing. We create them out of our history, actually, and the things that we already know about. So understanding the history is very important for you to understand everyday life. You will see how women got their, let's say, freedom along the 20th century, how young people started to rebel against the traditional ways of living in the 70s also. You'll study periods as fun as the, let's say, the Roaring 20s and jazz. And events in history that are not as nice, like the Hiroshima bomb and Nagasaki and the destruction after the Second World War. And of course, more. You'll understand the concentration camps, you'll understand Camp David, the Wall Street crash. I mean, things that we still talk about today. And dictate the things that we, again, know. We will probably revise the history of the British Crown, Twin Towers, Bin Laden, the introduction of the modern technology, and so on and so forth. So I invite you to travel through this interesting journey with me and, well, enjoy it along with the videos.